Good morning. It is another edition of Talent Talk. It is actually episode, I believe, 96. Amazing as that might be. I am Jurgen. Hey, thank you, Christy. I'm Jurgen Robinson, and today is November 30th. This is the last day of the month. With me today, we have yo boy, Steve.
Woo.
How's it going?
Good morning. Happy Monday, Jurgen.
Happy Monday, Steve. But we are not alone. It's kind of like a Michael Jackson song, right?
We are.
We also have with us Davina.
Woo woo! Hey, let me get in the screen. Hey, I don't have like a really nice background like you guys. Jurgen's got the backside. You've got the Christmas stuff going. I've just got
what?
Like, plain walls. So boring.
Good morning, Pat.
Good morning.
Yeah, I was just still processing. I have the backside. Makes me feel so good. So, today, and I'm looking at myself going, man, my haircut looks really short today.
I was just about to say that, Jurgen. You got the do, you got it all faded up nice and looking sharp.
Yeah, it looks like I took a lawnmower to my head. But we're going to be talking about something kind of interesting, kind of fun with property management and what else?
Property management.
and the effects of property management. There are a lot of things that are going on. So, I didn't expect such stunned silence. I was looking for something.
We're just throwing you for a loop this Monday.
Yeah. I got to change the bar graph again. I mean, I was sitting up there kind of a little bit. Apparently, I was on my high horse when I asked that question. So I just brought myself back down to earth.
Oh, okay.
You guys had a nice holiday weekend. I don't know if you did today's Cyber Monday also, right?
Mm.
So we've had our Black Friday weekend. Hopefully you had a nice holiday with your family.
It was weird. It was good. I mean, it was small, it was quiet, it was totally different. But when you mentioned Black Friday, I did later in the day kind of go out just a little bit and nothing. I mean, it was very quiet out there. I mean, it didn't feel like a Black Friday. It felt like Friday.
Yeah.
Didn't quite see a frenzy of people out there either. I didn't do any Black Friday shopping. I just had to go to the grocery store. But I'd say the same. How about you, Steve?
A lot more online shopping for everyone. I think that's a big thing right now. Everyone's staying safe, staying out of stores. So we were out and about, but it just not a lot of crowds anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, glad you guys are safe and had some time for putting aside for giving thanks, which we should do every day, right? But as you talked about, we have a group of you guys, we got a group of guests like waiting on backstage. This is like we are breaking the numbers of history this morning, and we're gonna be looking like a choir in a few moments, right? So, but we're talking property management, as Jurgen mentioned, kind of the effects that this season has had on like property management as a whole, and we're talking about landlords and such. So we're going to dive into that in a moment. But we have a trivia question, don't we?
We do. Kind of leading into our guest. We always want to drop a little bit of knowledge and trivia. So trivia question for today is in 2019 there were approximately how many housing units occupied by renters in the United States? So how many housing units were there occupied by renters in the United States? Was it A, 43,000, B, 500,000, C, 5 million, or D, 43 million? Drop your answer in the comment section and we'll bring you the answer at the end of the podcast.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
Those numbers are way.
We're from here to here.
It started with like two. So anyway, all right. So we're gonna bring our guests on, and And, of course, this introduction doesn't do them justice, but I will do the best that I can. We actually have 4 guests joining us this morning. It's going to be nice and tight and cozy and fun and informative. First guest I want to introduce, we'll introduce them all and bring them all in at the same time. But want to introduce first guest is actually owner of a company called Landlord Solution, and actually is a lobbyist for a company called NARPM. And we're going to have him talk about what that acronym NARPM actually stands for as well. And he's grown up in the real estate industry. So he has had, I won't disclose his age, but he has had a lot of years of experience. He's very young. And so we definitely want to introduce him in as an expert in what is going on in regards to our legislation, and also what he is seeing is in regards to property ownership and the rights of homeowners. And then also we are having join us is our group from John L. Scott, Seattle Northwest. And it's definitely an honor to have our people on as well. We have Michele, Rozinek, Michael Lee, and Leeann Ghiglione. They are the owner operators of John L. Scott, Seattle Northwest, which really is focused on property management in Puget Sound. And so we are honored to have them on. And I will also say that this group, like when we put us all together, we represent over 150 years of real estate experience. Oh my gosh. So without further ado, let's bring on our guests right now, Jim, Michele, Michael, and Leeann.
Hey.
Morning.
Morning.
Thanks, guys, for joining in. I mean, I know that was like I was like, I've never introduced 4 people at one time. So. Oh my gosh. Thank you guys so much. Then it's like, okay, so where do I start? I guess, so what we're talking about today is property management. And there are a lot of different things that have been going on in our real estate world because of COVID. So we are using the C word today. And so I'm going to start with Jim Henderson here. And Jim, the banner is kind of crossing over.
I know.
Your mask.
There we go. Got my mask on. Right?
Yeah, there you go. And so I mentioned a little bit about Landlord Solutions, Inc., which is your company that you've owned for 30 years. And then since you were 1. And then the other is NARPM, which is the NARPM. And I didn't explain what that acronym stands for. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your company and what you do? What is NARPM as well?
Sure. Thank you for having me. So Landlord Solutions works with landlords doing evictions and tenant screening. So, and we'll talk a lot today about, as housing providers, where those supports come in and why they're super important right now. And then I'm also the state lobbyist for NARPM, which is the National Association of Residential Property Managers. So we are a national association. We have 5 chapters in Washington State. And we're made up of professional property managers along with affiliate members who support our industry. So we'll talk a little bit more about NARPM and some of the resources that landlords we introduce landlords to help them through COVID and just this change and this ever-changing place in Washington State as being a housing provider.
Yeah. Jim, it's interesting. A lot of times in our state, we really care about disenfranchised. We're very focused on how to help take care of people as it comes to laws, everything else. And with no evictions, et cetera, it's interesting to have a voice representing maybe the owners rather than those that may be a little bit disenfranchised. When we're talking about the current rules that are in place with the pandemic, with what's happened with coronavirus regarding evictions and non-payment of rent, what are those and how do you see those from your point of view? How do you see that impacting homeowners, homeownership?
So big question. The impact that we're seeing right now is that currently landlords can ask a tenant to vacate the home if they're month to month, and if the owner wants to move into the property as their primary residence, or they want to sell the property. And really the biggest concern is more on the sales side, is that for every house that is sold, it leaves the rental pool. So we already have a shortage of housing in our state, and now that's being further problematic when we're losing those homes because landlords are wanting to sell. And I believe that they are selling because they're needing to financially, they can't afford to carry a property that they're not able to get rental income on, and or this may have accelerated their exit plan out of the market anyways. And so but nevertheless, we're not replacing those units on the market.
Yeah. And kind of bouncing it out from you, Jim, on that perspective from lobbying, from really standing up for the property owners' rights. Michele, Leeann, Michael, how have you guys seen that in play as property managers? Oh, Michele, can't hear you very well.
We've seen it more in Seattle than outside the city limits because of the trying to be politically correct here, of the
policy
restrictions.
The stricter restrictions inside the city.
Gotcha.
A lot of people are moving out of the city, and a lot of city landlords are selling their properties in Seattle because they don't want to be landlords in Seattle anymore. And so that's impacted a lot of the city. And if you drive downtown Seattle, it looks kind of like a ghost town now. A lot of businesses are boarded up, and it's certainly not the city of Seattle that I grew up in. So it's very, very different.
I think that, and I know I'm grabbing just a lead on question here. I didn't even think about the compounding effect of what the cities are doing as well, potentially, in all this. It's not just what the state has, what the governor has put forward. It really is cities compound some of these as well, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I want to add to that. I think that from a state level and then down to a city level, the housing provider that's being most impacted by this is that single family or duplex, maybe small, fourplex or smaller, somebody who has it under professional management. But also the owner that is trying to self-manage that. And it's becoming more and more difficult to self-manage a property, and to be able to stay up with all the rules and to be able to comply with all of the changes, whether now at a state level, we've seen we're on like a fourth edition of the proclamation, and these proclamations aren't written in a way which the average landlord is going to be able to understand it. So there's been a lot of misunderstanding of what the rules are, and I think that trickles down even to within a city. And we talked about NARPM as an association, and while we focus a lot on legislation, but it's also on education and working with our members and keeping them informed as to all the changes, and as an association with 5 chapters working together to inform each other of those changes locally.
Yeah. With all the rules and restrictions that we have in place now in regards to property management, what are you guys seeing in the ways of maybe homeowners in foreclosure? Is that even something
we haven't seen that here yet? Not like we did back in 2008. When was it 8? I think it was 8. Right now, it seems to be that we've been very fortunate that most of our tenants have been able to pay rent or get help from the state. The ones that are most impacted right now are the small commercial tenants that we manage.
Gotcha.
Well, yeah. I think that this also goes back to what may be motivating landlords to sell units, is so that they can afford to carry. Maybe they have more than one rental house. They're having to carry them, so they need some cash to make that happen. I think also we have such a strong sales market right now, and I don't predict that we're at the same risk of foreclosure that we were back in 07 and 08. We seem to have a strong housing market. But again, on the other side of that is that for every home that is being sold, it's leaving the rental pool. So, we're seeing, more people enter into the market. So on one end, it's good because we're seeing more homes coming into the market. Those typically first-time buyers, but we're losing those in the rental pool. So
that actually is a good point that you make there, because I think when we look at real estate and property management, how we work so well together, because if you're not in a position to have your property occupied by a tenant, then that would be selling the property, and that property not being a rental any longer. And so we look at that on two separate sides as well. So that's really a good perspective to bring up. But actually rolling this back just a little bit, I think there's a perspective or a point that we didn't cover is the rules. Like, you talk about, you talked about the impact potentially, but like, what are the rules right now? Like, what's changed in COVID in regards to what a landlord can or can't do, and what a tenant can or can't do? Can you clarify a little bit of what's going on now that's different from the past?
Yeah, so I'm gonna hit like the the easy to follow rules. So we have 4 reasons that you are allowed to ask a tenant to vacate. And one is that you want to sell the house. The other is that the owner wants to occupy it as their primary residence. Another reason is that the occupant is a significant and immediate risk to the safety and health of the property or others. And then the 4th reason is that if your home or your unit is being occupied by somebody who does not have your permission to be there. So if your original tenant has vacated and you have somebody now living there that was not on the original rental agreement or the lease, that person is there without permission, you could give that person a notice to vacate because they're there without your permission. There are some nuances there, and there's some very, very clear distinctions as to how we get there. So I would say that if you have one of these situations that's not as clear as that you want to move into it or sell it, work with your attorney to determine if the proclamation fits your situation. I would say then another set of rules is around how we communicate with tenants and what we're able to communicate about. It needs to be said again that as housing providers, if your resident is not paying rent, you are not allowed to threaten eviction or give them a notice to pay or vacate. Okay, you are allowed to talk to them about. Well, let me back up. You need to be offering them the option of a repayment plan. Under the proclamation, you're required to offer them the option of a repayment plan if you intend to, at some point, looking into the future, you intend to then try to recapture some of that unpaid rent from them in some way. We don't know what that's going to look like. And these forms are available at the Attorney General's website, or you can reach out to, again, we'll kind of talk about, associations and where some education would be. If you're a landlord, you're not a member of one of these groups, but so then the other nuance thing is just, and how do we communicate? What kind of notice can we give somebody who hasn't paid rent? I would just say, like under the current proclamation, and I'll probably let Leeann and Michele and Michael speak more about this, like how they communicate with tenants who haven't paid rent. But there were some, in the current proclamation, the governor's office did include that we're allowed to use customary communication. So maybe how you would have communicated pre-COVID about upcoming rent, and options of a repayment plan, you can kind of go back to that model. And maybe Leeann and Michele can give some examples of how they're doing that.
Yeah.
One of the other rules too that has changed during COVID is that we are not allowed to increase rents.
Oh, good.
So typically in our market, we would, at the time that a lease renews for another 12-month period, we would review the market to see if rents have increased over that period of time, and if a rent increase was called for, we would increase the rent for some amount and do that. But now we're not allowed to do that, so we haven't been able to do that since March, and we can't do that until I forget when the next March, or what is it, guys? I can't remember, but so we can't.
My prediction is we're not going to be able to until probably after May of next year.
So that's one area that we can't do anything about either. So assuming that we have a tenant that's paying rent, we can't increase it for the benefit of the owner either. And that's okay. I mean, I understand if times are tough, but that's one rule also that we can't do anything about. Are there others? I forget. The rules change pretty quickly, almost on a daily basis. Quite honestly, we can't keep up with them all.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of good.
Well, and then, you layer that on top of, maybe the city that you live in and what their extension after the governor's proclamation expires, or during the proclamation, are there some other restrictions? We talked about Seattle, and there are some other jurisdictions and cities in our state that have passed ordinances that would further extend the proclamation.
There's also a federal level restrictions as well, right? So we have 3 different layers there: federal, state, and local. So it's complicated, to say the least.
Yeah. That actually leads into the next question, which is really interesting. Okay, so first and foremost, what we have is it's not a law, but we have a proclamation by the governor's office, right? And then on top of that, we have ordinances that are in by the city. And then, of course, Michael, you just mentioned also there's a federal layer on top of all this. So we've got these different, to quote Shrek, like layers of an onion, right? That we got to peel through to figure out what the real thing is. When looking at this, so Jim, with what you do on the lobbying side, first and foremost, where does that go, and how? What are you looking, or what is like NARPM looking to address within the different layers? So say you've got federal on one side, you have state on another, and you have city. What are some of the key things that you're looking, or that NARPM might be looking to assist or address to help homeowners or landlords in this?
Yeah, I think from just a strategy that just looking at when you represent an association that's statewide, definitely statewide policy is preferred. It's easiest for your members to have one set of rules which they're following, and I think it's the same for any owner operator. If you manage or if you own property in different cities, or then one policy is easiest for everyone to be successful in complying with. On that, I think, top priorities. Rental assistance is probably at the top of our list of how do we get rental assistance to residents. So that means we need more federal money. And then when that federal money comes in, how do we, how do we help those, and how do we get the money to the people who need it the most? So I'm going to go back. Let me say the payment plan. So right now, we spend a lot of time in our industry talking about what is a reasonable payment plan. And if you owe 2 months rent versus if you owe 8, 9, 10 months rent. And as this goes longer, residents could become more further and further in debt. So how do we help them? Does that answer your question? I mean, I can get in the weeds a little bit more about, how, we want to see the moratorium end, in the sense that I guess the other frustrating part in property management right now is that there are a small a significant, but a small in total of residents who are not communicating with us, and where we're offering them the option of the repayment plan, but they're not working back with us and working out a plan with us. And that's something in which we would like a tool in which to be able to essentially bring them to the table to then say, hey, let's work this out and let's get you the resources, because we believe that there are resources out there that could benefit them. But if they're not engaging back with us, or even with dispute resolution, who we've got a model and a partnership there, if they're not reaching out to anybody, then nobody's able to help them, and that's not helping them. And the objective is that we continue to help them.
Yeah, and Jim, I think that does that does help. And as I pass it over to Steve, there is one way we know whether it's helping or not. If anybody's got some questions out in Facebook, Instagram, whichever land out there on the social, put it in the comments. Christy will bring them up and over to us. So that helps us with our understanding of if we're actually getting the answers that people are caring about most. So Steve?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, just kind of throwing this out there. And this probably is a question for Jim. What are some of the discussions that's maybe taking place in the legislature to maybe address landlord-tenant issues?
So there are a lot of proposed, bills, and we have some idea of kind of there's definitely a theme. The theme is going to be, around the unpaid rent. How does the unpaid rent get paid? How does that get paid? How much versus how much federal assistance is going to be available, or state assistance to pay off those months in the rear? I can say that because of the nature of how session's going to go this year, we're not going to be in person. It's going to be done virtually. The suggestion is that where normally, because we're in a long session, we would have thousands of bills that the legislature would hear. But primarily for housing bills, the legislature would like to see us kind of package those bills into a larger bill, and then we would then work through bills that are similar in nature, and we're looking at bills like just cause, roommate protections. We may see tenant screening bills, security deposits. These are kind of the reoccurring themes of that we see each year in the legislature. Again, priority being, how do we keep people housed while they're able to meet their obligation to pay rent? And at the same time, we know that we have a lot of residents that are being impacted that have never been unable to pay their rent before. So you've got a lot of service industry professionals who are working, and then the governor puts out a moratorium on their business, and then they're unable to go to work. So I think that's another area where when we talk about rental assistance, we're not just talking about, those at 50% or below the area median income. I mean, we have a lot of people at 80 to 110, maybe 20% of the area median income that are being financially impacted by COVID and unable to pay rent, or unable to pay all of their rent. So maybe they're able to pay half of it, but they have another portion of it that they're unable to pay. We want to see policies that help everybody and that don't leave out those who typically or normally or in the who haven't been on rental assistance before.
Just a quick interjection. Jim, what you mentioned is really on that lobbying side, but when it comes down to it, what you do on the lobbying side with NARPM and what NARPM represents is really working for property managers like Leeann and Michael and Michele. And for you guys, Leeann, Michael, Michele, what is it that's important to you? Like, where do you hope to see some progress coming up?
I would love to see some help for the owners. We see so much help out there for the tenants, but we've had owners that have had to leave because they aren't getting rent, and they think we can control that, but we can't control that because we're under all of the different ordinances wherever it is that we are managing. whether it be down in Olympia or here in Seattle, because we manage a pretty broad spectrum within a lot of different counties. So it'd be great if we could come to the table and talk renters and and owners, specifically because we don't manage for large conglomerates. We manage for what we typically call the mom and pops of this, the world that we live in today, that have maybe one rental, or maybe they have a duplex, or not huge deep pockets, which is where excuse me, most people think that people that own property have these huge deep pockets, but they really don't.
That's actually good that you mentioned that, because one of the things that we didn't really talk through also is how property managers and how because you guys are in the trenches, right? You guys are actually dealing with the tenants. You're dealing with the landlords. Your job is to protect the landlord's asset, which is their property, and by putting tenants that are responsible in those properties and such. One of the things that we had actually had some recent conversations about is just how property management activities and what you guys are getting calls, like, people are at home now, things are like, what are you guys seeing? You're obviously hearing from your landlords. You obviously are having some tenants and conversations with the tenants about not being able to pay. And then of course, now people are at home and they're using the properties more. What does your day look like? What are you hearing from people these days?
A lot of broken dishwashers, a lot of broken washing machines.
Yeah.
I think Leeann mentioned this earlier when we had a last meeting here, but as people stay home longer these days, working from home, they use the house and all their appliances a lot more than usual. So we're seeing a lot of work orders coming more than usual here. And I'm finding myself being more of a therapist as part of being a property manager. People are stressed out, right? So they'll call in, email, and there's a lot of issues that people are dealing with here, right? And so we as property managers deal directly, like you said, with our clients who are stressed out about their situation, but tenants about their situation as well. So we have to kind of walk this fine line and deal with all these stresses that everyone's dealing with right now as well.
We have to be so much nicer than usual. It's really a tough road to hoe. It's, we're not used to being that nice. That's a joke, okay? That's really a joke.
Michele, I don't know if it was. I just...
The thing I wanted to say something too about what Leeann said. The vast majority of our owners and our landlords are people who have worked really hard all their life to be able to afford one or two, maybe three rentals, and they've retired and expected to have that income to support them in their retirement. And so they're older, and this is their retirement income. So this has been a real shock to them and their systems, and it's really hurt them significantly. And it's very sad. It's very, very sad.
Yeah. Leeann, you concur?
Oh yeah, it's tough to hear different owners, trying to figure out how to rob Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. But then on the flip side, we have owners that don't have these deep pockets, but maybe they have a sixplex or. That's Jim.
Can you hear my train?
Oh yeah, that's Jim's train. But that are giving a rent credit for Christmas for their tenants, and even though they kind of have to borrow from Peter to pay Paul to get that water, sewer, garbage bill that's over $2,000, because nothing is being forgiven for the owners. They still have to pay their property taxes and their water, sewer, garbage, and their electric, and they still can have all of those issues that are compiled upon them that they normally, in a normal day-to-day living, we pay those and no harm, no foul. So it's kind of, for me, it warms my heart to have owners who aren't looking at their own bottom line, but really do have compassion for their tenants.
Yeah. You mentioned something here, and this is kind of for the group, the group of guests can kind of be tossed out there. So we understand what the lack of evictions, a lot of things that are set up that you're dealing with proclamations or ordinances, et cetera, are really set up to help protect people who are in vulnerable situations, mostly in the tenant side of things. But you do mention something about the landlords are having to, and most of them that you guys are helping specifically are single owners, or they just have a property or two. And is there any assistance? And especially, Michael, you mentioned that one of the things that's amazing here is since people are staying in so much, they're finding out these little things that annoy them, or you mentioned before, like drippy faucets or things that normally, since they're not at home so much, they wouldn't even notice, but these are becoming work orders, which means these are additional costs on homeowners as well. What are the reliefs that you're seeing, or are there any reliefs that you're seeing that are kind of being set up for homeowners at all? Or
Jim, is there any?
I can't speak directly to currently what is available. At the beginning of the pandemic, there was a forbearance that you can take on your mortgage, but I'm not sure where we're at with that. Mortgages are federally controlled, so it's unless unless you bank with somebody or your mortgage is held by somebody privately, or it's not federally underwritten. That's which the majority of the mortgages are. So currently right now I do not know of a federal program in which for that puts a forbearance on mortgages.
Yeah.
And in fact, while I guess I am going to throw somebody under the bus, because the vendors are so busy and so jammed and so backed up, they're making hay while the sun shines, and their prices have gone up, and they're charging extra for things like trip charges that they didn't used to charge for, and extra for emergency calls that they didn't used to charge for. So costs for work have gone up significantly in the past few months. And so those costs that you mentioned, Jurgen, are greater than they once were. So
yeah.
The other thing too, sorry, Michelle. The other thing is that at the beginning of the pandemic, the federal government extended the property taxes. So you didn't have to pay them on April 1st, or whenever they were due, April 30th. They extended that out till June 1st. But this time around, we're still in this pandemic and people are still in the same situations, if not even more dire. They didn't extend that part for the October 31st deadline, or November 2nd, I think it got, because of the weekend. But they didn't extend it this time. So I've heard from a few owners that were like, well, didn't they extend it still? Why did you pay it? Why'd you pay my property taxes? I thought it was extended. It's like, nope, they didn't extend it this time. So it's like sometimes they do things that are helpful to the owners, but very seldom are we seeing any relief for them.
Well, and just to add to that, I think from a legislative standpoint, we may see a bill for capital gains tax or an income tax. So in some way, I mean, all of the money in which we're taking out of our rainy day fund at a state level, and that we're using. I mean, we have some different landlord funds, but funding those funds and then getting federal assistance and any money that we have to pay back, that we're using, all that money has to come from somewhere as a state, and so there's another cost burden that likely landlords are going to feel the impact of.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting. Steve?
Yeah, just kind of throwing this out there to the group, what is maybe some advice that you would be able to give homeowners and buyers just moving forward?
Don't give up.
Property management, or
don't give up. This is still a great way to invest your money, and invest your money for the greatest return is real estate, in my opinion. This is a blip in time, a bubble, so that it's going to go away. This isn't always going to be here.
And people always need
This
to have,
isn't always going to be here.
right. And we need to have that roof over our head. We do have to have housing. And like Michele said, it's a bubble. We go through them, every so often, and we figure out how to get through to the other side.
Yeah, I've been in this business for 33 years, and I've seen blips like this before. So it's up and down and up and down and up and down. So this is a great way to invest in your future. So, maybe this isn't the right time to be a landlord, but that doesn't mean it won't be a good time again in the future. So it's a great time to buy. So buy property and hang on to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve, and one recommendation from our side is make sure you use professional management services if you do buy a property management here, just to kind of
Absolutely.
yourself, right?
Absolutely.
There's a lot of laws, like we talked about these ever-changing laws here. You mess up, you're going to be in a lawsuit situation potentially here. So, we always recommend if you do go by yourself, make sure you understand the laws, landlord tenant laws to the T here. Or my recommendation is hire us. So.
Right.
Yeah, and I want to add to what
that was a commercial.
There you
go. To what Michele was saying, because I see housing providers kind of in two categories. I see landlords and I see investors, and I think that it's still a great business to invest in, and with that, I think that the investor look at this right now is probably a good time to be an investor and to turn that property over to professional property management. I think if you want to be a landlord, I think you need it. It is not the passive income and passive job that it probably was, 10, 20 years ago. It's essentially, it's a part-time job. And if you're going to be an active landlord, you're going to self-manage your property, you really need to spend a lot of time learning the laws and being actively involved in organizations like the Rental Housing Association of Washington or the Washington Landlord Association. For multifamily property owners, there's the Washington Multifamily Housing Association. And then NARPM is, for professional property manager. So if you are a property manager, you're working for someone, you're working for an office that does property management, NARPM is where you would join to get your education, get your clock hours, to then work with your owners that you work for.
Yeah.
That's good. And you know what? You actually both of you covered kind of the last questions that we wanted. We could keep going. We're actually after way over time. We can do another show on this, like seriously. Jim, as you were kind of wrapping up, you were talking about the different organizations, and there were a lot of acronyms there that were thrown out. So if someone is a landlord and they're, of course, definitely hire a property manager. It's too scary. There's too much. Things are changing. You don't want to get yourself caught in a situation where you're not operating within the laws as they're changing. A property owner that just wants some information and resources about what's going on. Jim, as you're deep in it, you've done 3 sessions with the legislature and are actively lobbying. Where can they? Is there like one central place where they can go? Is there a phone call they can make to get resources? What should they do?
One place, I would say, I don't think there's one kind of public space where a landlord can go that's going to get them all of the resources that they need. I would say, again, this is another reason to belong to an association, because through the association, they're tracking all of these changes and then providing their members with the most current and updated information. So again, another reason and a benefit to be able to belong to a professional association is that you receive all of the forms, you receive information about rental assistance that's available. So the latest industry news and where to get that support is provided by them. I would say that's kind of my best resource for you. Otherwise, when you're looking on the internet, it's not clear. Is it outdated? Does it apply to your situation? Do you know how to use that in your scenario? Again, you could spend hours trying to track down this information, trying to learn it kind of, here and there.
And you might actually end up at the wrong city, the wrong state, the wrong, the wrong county, and you're using the wrong forms.
Yeah, which is common.
Okay. Well, this is what we're going to do. We are going to connect with you guys and get the resources, and then we'll have Christy post it on our page with some numbers and websites for some information, so where people can go to get some guidance and get some questions answered. So we'll get that from you guys so we can have the right contact info.
Yeah, and just want to acknowledge Sherilyn's comment there that forbearance is not forgiveness, and absolutely, and that's what was talked about. Is this is something that can end up running, and if there's not some structure set on how they would provide relief or that repayment, it could get very difficult. And I think that's part of what needs to be sorted out in all this. And I just had one, while during the conversation, and without trying to extend it too long, Leeann, I think you had mentioned this, that, sometimes homeowners or landlords kind of end up getting vilified just a little bit in the situation as kind of the bad guy. And the big push around here is really for affordable housing, as opposed to calling one side bad or good or anything else. When you guys look at it, and you guys work with homeowners that become landlord, when you look at it, do you see them as part of the solution to affordable housing, or how do you think that plays into the equation if they're allowed to?
Well, sure. I mean, the more housing we have that can come on the market for, tenants can allow a pool to grow. We would have more resources for those tenants that can't find housing. The closer you get to any of the downtown cores, though, whether it's downtown Tacoma, downtown Seattle, downtown Olympia, those places become more, the rents are higher there. So the counties are where we are seeing the highest population growth in renters right now, which I believe has to do something with, for instance, Google or Facebook or Amazon saying you can all work from home now. So it just kind of compounds the whole, all right, we're going to work from home. That's going to mean more stress on the home. It just kind of, it all goes snowballs downhill to us to make all the decisions for the owners. But, the more homes that can be in the rental market, then the more housing we have to offer to those that can't find housing. But this whole Northwest area is such a desirable place to live. The climate is amazing, the places you can go, the things to do. So we have a constant stream of people coming into this area, and the housing just really, truly, affordably isn't there right now, I don't think. Michele, Michael?
I think affordable housing is a function of government. Oops, my Democrat just showed. I think it's government regulation is I think what helps affordable housing. There should be some regulation that allows developers some tax credits to include affordable housing in their buildings, and it shouldn't be just entirely the responsibility of the builders and the owners to provide that. So that I think that there's, when buildings are built, there should be a certain percentage that's affordable, and that should be get some tax credits from the government, and that's where that affordable housing comes from. So that's how I think it ought to work, but that's me. So
Interesting.
Jim, did you have anything that you're rocking? You look like you had.
No, I mean, I think that we need to do both of what Leeann and Michele said, and I think that Leeann's spot on, and that the way we get to a market that has affordable housing is we need more units on the market. And then to Michele's point, in order to do that, we need to incentivize investment into the state. And I think that right now, investors may be a little unsure about where to put their investment. particularly in the multifamily realm, because potentially if we see a bill for rent control, what will that mean to the dollars that they put into it? And how do they continue to maintain a building if rent control is going to get put on it? So I think that, and I just want to add, I think that one thing that we as an industry are learning is through COVID is what can we do? And so we're finding out what that is, and we're having to rethink, and we're having to come up with new solutions to old problems, and it's and that's good. And I think that it's always worth the conversation, and I think it's important that we continually and I don't suspect that we're going to go back to the way things were. So we're going to have to get used to it looking different, but hopefully with it looking different, we're also getting a better outcome. And I think that as a lobbyist who sits in a lot of stakeholder meetings, it is really the overall interest of all the stakeholders that we come out with something that is better. And while we spend a lot of time, I trying to advocate for what our position and kind of how we get there and what better is, but there isn't an interest in anybody being left out. And that again, it's a problem in which impacts a lot of people, and trying to make sure that we're equitable, and that we're fair, and that there's access to everybody who needs assistance. And then how do we move forward? How do we put some of this into practice, and we create a better experience for everybody?
I thought you were going to say a better tomorrow. And that's what I want. How do we? And Marie Petit, hey Marie, our property owners are vital to having rental homes in the market. Affordable housing is desperately needed. Absolutely.
True.
Yeah, I mean, we're never going to do this without private investment, right? I mean, we're always going to need housing providers. Housing providers are the lifeline to affordable housing. They have flexibility that maybe the corporations don't have. They offer a type of housing that corporations don't offer. So I think there's room for everybody. But I think that it continues to be important that we not discourage investment into our market, and that we continually recognize and remember, as been said here, a lot of housing providers depend on that income as well. And so while maybe their resident isn't receiving income, they may also not be receiving income, which they depend on for their health care and for their medications and to support their own livelihood.
Yeah. And there was just one comment from Tina, Christy just had up there that was great information. Thanks for sharing. And really, you guys have been really generous with your time as well. Davian, did you want to wrap anything up here? Or?
Yeah, you gonna give me the beatbox? I'll go ahead and get the wrap. I'm just kidding.
I thought we were doing presents. So
no, I think it's, you guys have done a really good job at covering a lot of the questions. Leeann mentioned we can go way deeper, that we'd have to save that for another episode. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the things that we would like to have, that I know that Jim, you had mentioned, was the forbearance. Sherilyn had mentioned a comment about that, as maybe having a mortgage servicer on to talk about the forbearance process, because that definitely is one of the pieces of the puzzle here as well. But love that, of course, there's no solutions yet, but there will be eventually. We'll be figuring out what that ends up, and we'll see what that looks like along the way.
And Davina, when you say solutions, this is how solutions come about, through conversation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm honored, we are honored to be able to have these conversations, and thank you for helping us I feel more educated and enlightened, and I'm sure that our all of us and our viewers do as well. So, and if anyone has any questions or wants to get a hold of our John O. Scott Seattle Northwest team, or needs to get a hold of Jim, we will put there some contact information as well in our comments, so that if you have any questions, you can reach out directly. So, We do have, well, do you guys want to stay on for the trivia question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Avina, can I just take a moment to say a big thank you to Jim Henderson, who is, I don't know what we would do in our industry if we didn't have somebody like him, and definitely him. He's just been on our team for so long and done so much for us. I really just, I don't know where we'd be without Mr. Henderson. He is absolutely the top. So thank you, Jim, for being on our team.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you,
Agreed.
Michele. Thank you.
High five, Jim.
High five.
Just
High
go
five.
By the way,
now, right?
I'm over here blushing for Jim. So
Lots of love for Jim.
All right. So what was our trivia question? Steve.
Yeah.
Who's doing this?
Hey guys, good morning. So today's trivia question is, in 2019, there were approximately blank housing units occupied by renters in the United States. Was it 43,000, 500,000, 5 million, or 43 million? So the viewers out there, it's kind of all over the place here. But we're ready. Are you guys ready for the answer?
yeah, and as clarification, this is nationwide,
Yes.
not just block-wise.
Just in your neighborhood.
All right, guys. So the answer is 43 million. That's incredible.
Wow.
That is a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's a lot. I was reading and that there were like 36, like nearly 40% of Americans were in rental homes, which it's a lot of peeps, a lot of bodies.
It's a lot of
Marie
lot of
Petit
rentals.
says,
Yeah.
backs you up, Michele. Marie Petit says Jim is the best.
Thank you, Marie.
So, all right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And you guys, we are we'll definitely have you back again at some point. We'll have to have some more discussion. But so Steve is going to bring in the rest of the update for the week, and then we will wrap it up. So if you guys want to stay on for that, you can. Or if you, I know we've gone way over time. So if you guys want to drop off,
Yeah, and we'll put you all in the back room. That way you have a decision to watch. At some point, I want to figure out how we can make this box like the Brady Bunch or such, where we can go all around and. All right.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming on. We appreciate
Jim,
it.
Michele, Michael, Leeann, thank you again for coming on. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys, man, that was like just a wealth of knowledge, tons of good info. So I learned a lot. Shoot.
Oh, I didn't. I wasn't paying attention.
All right.
A ton to take in, and really, really relevant right now. I mean, as we're ending out the year, we've been dealing with COVID, and we're gonna enter 2021 with COVID still on the mind, right?
Yep.
Yeah, like Ray Charles. No, I'm just kidding. Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's like Georgia was on a lot of people's minds this past month too, right?
My goodness.
All right, you guys, let's jump in. We got just a few updates and some news coming up. So this week coming up, we have a clock hour class for our John L. Scott brokers. It's at home with diversity. That's going on tomorrow and Wednesday. If you're interested in taking the class, it is free to our John L. Scott brokers. Go to our website to register for our class. You can even go to our Facebook webpage. For our brokers, we also have our business meeting this Wednesday coming up. We also have a workshop. It's a role play workshop where we're going to be talking about doing the listing presentation. So we'll be going over that as well Wednesday. That is on our training calendar. We also have our career activator for our brokers, our John L. Scott brokers, and we have Forms Friday this Friday at 9:30. All these classes you can find on our John L. Scott webpage, and also on Friday we have our talent report and market update with Jurgen and Davina, where they will be going over what's happening in Thurston and Pierce County. They'll be going over our new listings and also our open houses. So lots of good stuff coming your way. Check us out.
Physical open houses.
Oh, we also have Holiday Magic, which is a event coming up. When is that scheduled, you guys?
December 8th, 9th, and 10th. So
Okay.
that Holiday Magic actually is an event. It's sponsored by the National Guard, available to all service members of all branches. And it is an opportunity for us to donate toys for families that are in need. And these families are all they apply. They don't have to be selected. So if they have a need, they can physically apply to be part of the program. Parents come out. There's 3 days that they're assigned to come out and pick up toys safely for their children. And they also have some resources available for the parents for job placement or searching, and also financial resources for the parents as well. So it's really a great opportunity to give. And I don't know if we have the link, but they only are accepting toy donations. But our organization, through Foundation Heroes, we can actually accept monetary donations and actually purchase toys. 100% of that goes straight to the cause, and we can actually purchase toys to deliver. So we're going to be needing to do that really soon, as the event is coming up in about a week.
I know. This is the corner, and it's right around it.
Yes. Yeah. So if you are interested in being a part.
Yeah. And additionally, the Salvation Army, we also have a virtual kettle set up for the Salvation Army, similar to Holiday Magic. The need this year over years prior, or hopefully years that are to come as well, is just higher this year than it's been in the past. Families have been truly affected by what has gone on with the restrictions, COVID. We're going to see what happens. I mean, we just had a holiday, and we'll be very curious to see what happens with any other infection rates. So this year of all years, we have not only Holiday Magic that's right around the corner, we also have through all of December a Salvation Army virtual kettle. Our goal is to raise over $5,000 for the Salvation Army, and you can help. Christy, I think you've got the link on there as well. So if you can put that link up along with the Holiday Magic, that'd be fantastic. Our whole mission is to contribute and be of benefit.
That's right. So, all right. What a day. What a Monday. And it's beautiful. I'm looking out the window. The sun is shining. The sky is blue. It's a crisp, probably 35 degrees. I don't know.
It's got to be at least 42.
You're probably looking right now to figure that one out. But
No, I'm not. I'm sitting around in my shorts and a short sleeve shirt still, though.
Yeah. So we will be seeing you guys later on this week. We are just glad to be here, glad to be a resource for you. And you want to take us home, Steve? You're right in the middle. Steve in the middle?
Steve in the middle. Ooh, I like that.
I tickle.
All right, you guys.
Hey, Donna.
Thanks again for tuning in to Talent Talk. We will do this again next week on Monday. So lots of great stuff coming your way. Appreciate you guys out there. All right, you guys, let's wrap this up with the big B bold on 3. 1, 2, 3. Be bold. Thanks again. Have a great week. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.